因为各位看到这是现在台风的状况，应该正在登陆中，正在登陆中代表现在是风力最大的时候。等一下它就会慢慢的开始变得稳定少一点啊。那到明天早上11点到这个地方，所以明天早上11点在这边，所以明天早上11点台北已经脱离暴风圈了。不管怎么样啊，现在我们知道的大致上的讯息是，台北市的公车已经没有再开了，在地下的捷运应该是有在开，但是像文湖线是不开的啊，所以我们等一下要先处理一个问题，就是说等一下我们今天第一个先跟各位说，我们5点钟之前已经结束，就是天黑之前，希望各位回到家或回到安全的地方，所以呢，等一下各位就先想一想，如果今天您是开车来的，也许离开的时候可以招几个人帮忙送大家一下。如果说今天你是用计程车来的，等一下必须要计程车回去的话等一下在我们这个 break 的时候，请到雅文这个地方去跟他登记。那我们要计算一下，我们需要叫多少计程车进来。也许说在5点的时候，比方也许我们叫个7、8台计程车进来，大家组合一下路线上车，大家就可以赶快离开因为那个计程车现在还要先叫，所以我跟大家先说一下这个情况也很抱歉，也非常感谢各位今天参加这个事情。那我们现在大家看到台风大概就是，它有点偏北，可是它登陆了之后，各位看它的路径，基本上沿着中台湾往西部走，路径会稍微变慢，但是通常是出路之后呢，它的强度会略降低大概这样。所以各位听到现在这个风声，大概最强就这个差不多现在这个样子。那另外就是大家回到家以后，建议各位呢，如果在台北地区的话，能够储水的话，就储一下水。以目前这个情况来看，应该是有几率停水因为浊度的关系。好，那我想今天我这个行政上面就先跟各位先说明一下，那各位可能要开始想一想，规划一下今天怎么离开这个地方那这个等一下呢，就请这个方老师来介绍一下佩佩，然后我们就开始今天下午的 session。
好，谢谢叶老师刚刚叶老师给我们一个非常好的一个计划，让我们都心里都非常放心所以今天大家都能平平安安出门，平安回家。那接下来我们今天下午是要讨论一个传播计划。这个传播计划呢，佩佩首先要跟大家介绍一些短片。短片里面就是叙说一个人，如果说他需要有一些商业的这种思考模式的话，他如何进行节能、减废跟减碳，这些都是在我们日常生活中非常重要的。等于是说，我们从昨天开始思考到，我们定计划的时候，一定要有一个策略，一定要有一个目标，然后能够去推展这些行政程序。那今天呢，佩佩就跟我们介绍一下我们如何去做，把这个计划做到非常的良好。那接下来我们最后面会有一个评估程序。So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our speakers, Pepe, for the presentation for you as a video clip.
Thank you, Professor Tang. So, have you heard of the story of Stuff?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you've watched that video. Okay, a few of you. We're going to watch it. And the reason why we're going to watch it is because it is a really good example of effective use of communication to address an environmental issue, especially a complex environmental issue. And so we're going to watch it, and I want you to take notes because you're going to analyze it. Okay? And if you could write down right now the questions that you're going to have to answer. That way when you're watching it, you can think about this. First, what is the goal of the video? What is the outcome? What is the action that they expect us to take after we watch the video? Second, who is the audience for this video? And please tell me if I'm missing one. Yes, thanks. Third, what is the message of the video? What is the video trying to tell us? And 4, do you think the video is effective and successful at delivering that message? And why? Do you want me to repeat it, or repeat one more time? Okay. Let me see if I can do it. So first, who's the audience for the video? Thank you. Oh, you took good notes. Actually, why don't we do this? Why don't we have different people in the audience repeat? What was the first one? I have ADD, so it makes things in my head. And jet lag.
The first one is the goal of the video and what's the expected actions.
Thank you. Who can tell me the second one? Who is the target audience? Thank you. Third, what is the message? And the last one? Is it successful and effective, and why? Okay, here we go. By the way, it has subtitles.
Do you have one of these? I got a little obsessed with mine. In fact, I got a little obsessed with all my stuff. Have you ever wondered where all the stuff we buy comes from and where it goes when we throw it out? I couldn't stop wondering about that, so I looked it up. And what the textbook said is that stuff moves through a system from extraction to production to distribution to consumption to disposal. All together, it's called the materials economy. Well, I looked into it a little bit more. In fact, I spent 10 years traveling the world, tracking where our stuff comes from and where it goes. And you know what I found out? That is not the whole story. There is a lot missing from this explanation. For one thing, this system looks like it's fine. No problem. But the truth is, it's a system in crisis. And the reason it's a system in crisis is it's a linear system and we live on a finite planet. And you cannot run a linear system on a finite planet indefinitely. Every step along the way, this system is interacting with the real world. In real life, it's not happening on a blank white page. It's interacting with societies, cultures, economies, the environment. And all along the way, it's bumping up against limits. Limits we don't see here because the diagram is incomplete. So let's go back through. Let's fill in some of the blanks and see what's missing. Well, one of the most important things that's missing is people. Yes, people. People live and work all along this system. And some people in this system matter a little more than others. Some have a little more say. Who are they? Well, let's start with the government. Now, my friends tell me I should use a tank to symbolize the government, and that's true in many countries and increasingly in our own. After all, more than 50% of our federal tax money is now going to the military. But I'm using a person to symbolize the government because I hold true to the vision and values. The government should be of the people, by the people, for the people. It's the government's job to watch out for us, to take care of us. That's their job. Then along came the corporation. Now, the reason the corporation looks bigger than the government is that the corporation is bigger than the government. Of the 100 largest economies on Earth now, 51 are corporations. And as the corporation has grown in size and power, we've seen a little change in the government, where they're a little more concerned in making sure everything's working out for those guys than for us. Okay, so let's see what else is missing from this picture. We'll start with extraction, which is a fancy word for natural resource exploitation, which is a fancy word for trashing the planet. What this looks like is we chop down the trees, we blow up mountains to get the metals inside, we use up all the water, and we wipe out the animals. So here, we are running up against our first limit. We are running out of resources. We are using too much stuff. Now, I know this can be hard to hear, but it's the truth, so we've got to deal with it. In the past 3 decades alone, 1/3 of the planet's natural resource base has been consumed. Gone. We are cutting and mining and hauling and trashing the place so fast that we're undermining the planet's very ability for people to live here. Where I live, in the United States, we have less than 4% of our original forest left. 40% of the waterways have become undrinkable. And our problem is not just that we're using too much stuff, but we're using more than our share. We have 5% of the world's population, but we're using 30% of the world's resources and creating 30% of the world's waste. If everybody consumed at US rates, we would need 3 to 5 planets. And you know what? We've only got 1. So my country's response to this limitation is simply to go take somebody else's. This is the third world, which some would say is another word for our stuff that somehow got on somebody else's land. So what does that look like? The same thing, trashing the place. 75% of global fisheries now are fished at or beyond capacity. 80% of the planet's original forests are gone. In the Amazon alone, we're losing 2,000 trees a minute. That is 7 football fields a minute. And what about the people who live here? Well, according to these guys, they don't own these resources, even if they've been living there for generations. They don't own the means of production, and they're not buying a lot of stuff. And in this system, if you don't own or buy a lot of stuff, you don't have value. So next, the materials move to production. And what happens there is we use energy to mix toxic chemicals in with the natural resources to make toxic contaminated products. There are over 100,000 synthetic chemicals in use in commerce today. Only a handful of them have even been tested for health impacts, and none have been tested for synergistic health impacts. That means when they interact with all the other chemicals we're exposed to every day. So we don't know the full impact on health and the environment of all these toxic chemicals, but we do know one thing: toxics in, toxics out. As long as we keep putting toxics into our industrial production systems, we're going to keep getting toxics in the stuff that we bring into our homes and workplaces and schools, and our bodies. Like BFRs, brominated flame retardants, they're a chemical that make things more fireproof, but they are super toxic. They're a neurotoxin. That means toxic to the brain. What are we even doing using a chemical like this? Yet we put it in our computers, our appliances, couches, mattresses, even some pillows. In fact, we take our pillows, we douse them in a neurotoxin, we bring them home and put our heads on them for 8 hours a night to sleep. Now, I don't know, but it seems to me in this country with so much potential, we could think of a better way to stop our heads from catching on fire at night. Now, these toxics build up the food chain and concentrate in our bodies. Do you know what is the food at the top of the food chain with the highest level of many toxic contaminants? Human breast milk. That means that we've reached a point where the smallest members of our societies, our babies, are getting the highest lifetime dose of toxic chemicals from breastfeeding from their mothers. Is that not an incredible violation? Breastfeeding must be the most fundamental human act of nurturing. It should be sacred and safe. Now, breastfeeding is still best, and mothers should definitely keep breastfeeding, but we should protect it. They should protect it. I thought they were looking out for us. And of course, the people who bear the biggest brunt of these toxic chemicals are the factory workers, many of whom are women of reproductive age. They're working with reproductive toxins, carcinogens, and more. Now I ask you, what kind of woman of reproductive age would work in a job exposed to reproductive toxins except for a woman with no other option? And that's one of the beauties of this system. The erosion of local environments and economies here ensures a constant supply of people with no other option. Globally, 200,000 people a day are moving from environments that have sustained them for generations into cities, many to live in slums, looking for work, no matter how toxic that work may be. So you see, it's not just resources that are wasted along this system, but people too. Whole communities get wasted. Yep, toxics in, toxics out. A lot of the toxics leave the factories in products, but even more leave as byproducts or pollution. And it's a lot of pollution. In the US, our industry admits to releasing over 4 billion pounds of toxic chemicals a year. That's probably a lot more, because that's only what they admit. So that's another limit, because yuck, who wants to look at and smell 4 billion pounds of toxic chemicals a year? So what do? Move the dirty factories overseas, pollute someone else's land. But surprise, a lot of that pollution is coming right back at us, carried by wind currents. So what happens after all these natural resources are turned into products? Well, it moves here for distribution. Now, distribution means selling all the toxic contaminated junk as quickly as possible. The goal here is to keep the prices down, keep the people buying, and keep the inventory moving. How do they keep the prices down? Well, they don't pay the store workers very much, and they skimp on health insurance every time they can. It's all about externalizing the costs. What that means is that the real costs of making stuff aren't captured in the price. In other words, we aren't paying for the stuff we buy. I was thinking about this the other day. I was walking to work and I wanted to listen to the news, so I popped into a Radio Shack to buy a radio. I found this cute little green radio for $4.99. I was standing there in line to buy this thing, and I was thinking, how could $4.99 possibly capture the cost of making this radio and getting it into my hands? The metal was probably mined in South Africa. The petroleum was probably drilled in Iraq. The plastics were probably produced in China. And maybe the whole thing was assembled by some 15-year-old in a maquiladora in Mexico. $4.99 wouldn't even pay the rent for the shelf space it occupied until I came along, let alone part of the staff guy's salary who helped me pick it out, or the multiple ocean cruises and truck rides pieces of this radio went on. That's how I realized I didn't pay for the radio. So who did pay? Well, these people paid with the loss of their natural resource space. These people paid with the loss of their clean air, with increasing asthma and cancer rates. Kids in the Congo paid with their future. 30% of the kids in part of the Congo have dropped out of school to mine coltan, a metal we need for our cheap and disposable electronics. These people even paid by having to cover their own health insurance. All along this system, people pitched in so I could get this radio for $4.99. And none of these contributions are recorded in any accounts book. That's what I mean by the company owners externalize the true cost of production. And that brings us to the golden arrow of consumption. This is the heart of the system, the engine that drives it. It is so important that protecting this arrow has become the top priority for both of these guys. That's why after 9/11, when our country was in shock, and President Bush could have suggested any number of appropriate things, to grieve, to pray, to hope. No, he said to shop, to shop. We have become a nation of consumers. Our primary identity has become that of being consumers, not mothers, teachers, farmers, but consumers. The primary way that our value is measured and demonstrated is by how much we contribute to this arrow, how much we consume. And do we? We shop and shop and shop, keep the materials flowing, and flow they do. Guess what percentage of total materials flow through this system is still in product or use 6 months after the date of sale in North America? 50%? 20? No, 1%. 1. In other words, 99% of the stuff we harvest, mine, process, transport, 99% of the stuff we run through this system is trashed within 6 months. Now, how can we run a planet with that level of materials throughput? It wasn't always like this. The average US person now consumes twice as much as they did 50 years ago. Ask your grandma. In her day, stewardship and resourcefulness and thrift were valued. So how did this happen? Well, it didn't just happen. It was designed. Shortly after World War II, these guys were figuring out how to ramp up the economy. Retailing analyst Victor Lebeau articulated the solution that's become the norm for the whole system. He said, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. President Eisenhower's Council of Economic Advisors chairman said that the American economy's ultimate purpose is to produce more consumer goods. More consumer goods? Our ultimate purpose? Not provide health care or education or safe transportation or sustainability or justice? Consumer goods? How did they get us to jump on board this program so enthusiastically? Well, two of their most effective strategies are planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is another word for designed for the dump. It means they actually make stuff to be useless as quickly as possible, so we'll chuck it and buy a new one. It's obvious with things like plastic bags and coffee cups, but now it's even big stuff. Mops, DVDs, cameras, barbecues, even everything. Even computers. Have you noticed that when you buy a computer now, the technology is changing so fast that in just a couple of years, it's actually an impediment to communication? I was curious about this, so I opened up a big desktop computer to see what was inside. And I found out that the piece that changes each year is just a tiny little piece in the corner. But you can't just change that one piece because each new version is a different shape. So you gotta chuck the whole thing and buy a new one. So I was reading industrial design journals from the 1950s when planned obsolescence was really catching on. These designers are so open about it. They actually discuss how fast can they make stuff break that still leaves the consumer having enough faith in the product to go out and buy another one. It was so intentional. But stuff cannot break fast enough to keep this arrow afloat. So there's also perceived obsolescence. Now, perceived obsolescence convinces us to throw away stuff that is still perfectly useful. How do they do that? Well, they change the way the stuff looks. So if you bought your stuff a couple of years ago, everyone can tell that you haven't contributed to this arrow recently. And since the way we demonstrate our value is contributing to this arrow, it can be embarrassing. Like, I've had the same fat white computer monitor on my desk for 5 years. My coworker just got a new computer. She has a flat, shiny, sleek monitor. It matches her computer, it matches her phone, even her pen stand. She looks like she's driving a spaceship Central, and I look like a washing machine. Fashion is another prime example of this. Have you ever wondered why women's shoe heels go from fat one year to skinny the next to fat to skinny? It's not because there's some debate about which heel structure is the most healthy for women's feet. It's because wearing fat heels in a skinny heel year shows everybody that you haven't contributed to that arrow as recently, so you're not as valuable as that person in skinny heels next to you, or more likely in some ad. It's to keep us buying new shoes. Advertisements and media in general plays a big role in this. Each of us in the U.S. is targeted with over 3,000 advertisements a day. We see more advertisements in 1 year than people 50 years ago saw in a lifetime. And if you think about it, what's the point of an ad except to make us unhappy with what we have? So 3,000 times a day, we're told our hair is wrong, our skin is wrong, our clothes are wrong, our furniture is wrong, our car is wrong, we are wrong, but it can all be made right if we just go shopping. Media also helps by hiding all of this and all of this. So the only part of the materials economy we see is the shopping. The extraction, production, and disposal all happens outside of our field of vision. So in the US, we have more stuff than ever before, but polls show that our national happiness is actually declining. Our national happiness peaked in the 1950s, the same time that this consumption mania exploded. Interesting coincidence. I think I know why. We have more stuff, but we have less time for the things that really make us happy. Friends, family, leisure time. We're working harder than ever. Some analysts say we have less leisure time than any time since feudal society. And do you know what the two main activities are that we do with the scant leisure time we have? Watch TV and shop. In the US, we spend 3 to 4 times as many hours shopping as our counterparts in Europe do. So we're in this ridiculous situation where we go to work, maybe 2 jobs even, and we come home and we're exhausted, so we plop down on our new couch and watch TV, and the commercials tell us you suck, so you've got to go to the mall to buy something to feel better, and then you've got to go to work more to pay for the stuff you just bought, so you come home and you're more tired, so you sit down and you watch more TV until you go to the mall again, and we're on this crazy work, watch, spend treadmill, and we could just stop. So in the end, what happens to all the stuff we buy anyway? At this rate of consumption, it can't fit into our houses, even though the average house size has doubled in this country since the 1970s. It all goes out in the garbage. And that brings us to disposal. This is the part of the materials economy we all know the most because we have to haul the junk out to the curb ourselves. Each of us in the United States makes 4.5 pounds of garbage a day. That's twice what we each made 30 years ago. All of this garbage either gets dumped in a landfill, which is just a big hole in the ground, or if you're really unlucky, first it's burned in an incinerator and then dumped in the landfill. Either way, they both pollute the air, land, water, and don't forget, change the climate. Incineration is really bad. Remember those toxics back in the production stage? Well, burning the garbage releases the toxics up into the air. Even worse, it makes new super toxics. Like dioxin. Dioxin is the most toxic man-made substance known to science, and incinerators are the #1 source of dioxin. That means that we could stop the #1 source of the most toxic man-made substance known just by stopping burning the trash. We could stop it today. Now, some companies don't want to deal with building landfills and incinerators here, so they just export the disposal too. What about recycling? Does recycling help? Yes, recycling helps. Recycling reduces the garbage at this end, and it reduces the pressure to mine and harvest new stuff at this end. Yes, 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 we should all recycle, but recycling is not enough. Recycling will never be enough, for a couple reasons. First, the waste coming out of our houses is just the tip of the iceberg. For every 1 garbage can of waste you put out on the curb, 70 garbage cans of waste were made upstream just to make the junk in that 1 garbage can you put out on the curb. So even if we could recycle 100% of the waste coming out of our households, it doesn't get to the core of the problems. Also, much of the garbage can't be recycled, either because it contains too many toxics or it's designed not to be recyclable in the first place. Like those juice packs, where they have layers of metal and paper and plastic all smushed together, you can never separate those for true recycling. So you see, it is a system in crisis. All along the way, we are bumping up against limits. From changing climate to declining happiness, it's just not working. But the good thing about such an all-pervasive problem is that there are so many points of intervention. There are people working here on saving forests and here on clean production, people working on labor rights and fair trade and conscious consuming and blocking landfills and incinerators, and very importantly, on taking back our government so that it really is by the people and for the people. All of this work is critically important, but things are really going to start moving when we see the connections, when we see the big picture. When people along the system get united, we can reclaim and transform this linear system into something new, a system that doesn't waste resources or people. Because what we really need to chuck is that old school throwaway mindset. There's a new school of thinking on this stuff, and it's based on sustainability and equity, green chemistry, zero waste, closed loop production, renewable energy, local living economies. It's already happening. Now, some say it's unrealistic, idealistic that it can't happen, but I say the ones who are unrealistic are those that want to continue with the old path. That's dreaming. Remember, that old way didn't just happen. It's not like gravity that we've just got to live with. People created it, and we're people too. So let's create something new.
Okay. Take a deep breath. It's okay. I know it's a little depressing. I want to start by asking you how does it make you feel when you watch this? What are things that you're feeling and thinking? What's the reaction you have to it? Shame? Disgust? Okay. Disappointed? Any positive? We need to change. So it shows, it makes us feel the urgency. Any other feelings towards this video? Angry. Angry, yes. So, this video, just to give you a little bit of background of what happened in the US when this video came out, it went viral, especially with teachers. And teachers started to look at it and send it to other teachers and show it to their students. And it became more or less of a movement. So much that they were able to raise funds, the company that produces it, the nonprofit organization, to make a series of videos on specific topics. And actually, Annie Leonard, who is the writer of this video and who is the person featured, who is narrating the video, she came up with the idea, and she started getting so popular that you would have to book her way in advance for her to come to give a talk. And we know because she was a keynote speaker for the NAAA conference a few years ago. And ECOM, the Canadian Environmental Education Association. And it's definitely controversial in the sense that it makes a statement, and it's in many ways telling you what to think. And in the US, we say that environmental education is supposed to help you or teach you how to think and not what to think. So it's supposed to present the information and develop the skills in the learner so that you can make your own decisions. But the important thing is that this video had an impact out there, or at least made enough noise so that people were talking about this. And at that level it was effective. But I want to know what you think from watching it. Do you think it's effective? And so I want you to talk to a partner, talk to someone near you, find somebody to work with, and I want you to go through the questions, and analyze the video from your perspective, share your thoughts around it, and let the other person do the same thing. I want you to talk about this for a few minutes, and then we're going to share as a group. Okay? Thank you. Let's do 5 minutes.
不要买东西是吧？他也有提到说不要但他主要的就是在那个他说自己的过程是他的特别编故事有这边说的这是资本主义的编故就是所以你觉得因为你也有可能可以看一下他应该有下一个他有讲水资源有讲海洋为例这个是什么
对啊，这一天我当时就看过了，就是看这种，对，看完影片只有一个想法，就是全部人都要修经济学。修了你就不会有这种想法，说要把商人毁灭，也不会讲说什么 disgusting 或者是什么 angry 之类的。因为这个问题是一个系统的问题，是一个制度的问题。因为这是资本主义啊，如果你要颠覆，你要变社会主义，你懂我的意思吗？
但是这样的话，就代表如果这个行动可以接受现况，
不是接受现状啊，是你要去找团结。其实他现在一开始讲，你不要买那么多就好，你不要买那么多就好，这根本问题是我们不要买。对啊。这是政府是会鼓励你促进经济的，消费券的概念就是刺激消费。这个商人很聪明，他如果他知道你一个产品用这么久，他这个产品就设计2年让你卖，手机就是很好例子。大同就是这样啊，电锅用10年就大同就会倒，因为大同太耐操了，没有人要买新的。跟那个比较没关系。像我们这些其实并没有，那是2回事。所以手机真的充2万，然后现在10万，如果是这样子的话，我觉得除了自己的经济，因为它不需要再去制造力调整过的这一套系统，所以它是个人的对啊，所以才会有那个会要那个系统，要如果你对，你要把那边工作，对啊，所以这就是体系问题，其实不晓得，对，结果，而且他自己说那些资源被压榨，那些穷人被迫去工作，就那些穷人巴不得那些工厂留下来，对某些人来讲是他们想法，因为他们不觉得自己被压榨，那是以我们应该说第一世界人当然会觉得他们被压榨，但是第一世界人他们觉得他是被压榨的。对啊，可不好？我觉得我有我牺牲好，可是第一世界像刚才有些人，他就是觉得那些人被压榨了，你现在懂我意思？可是那些人不觉得他是被压榨，如果他觉得他压榨，他干嘛会被压榨？对啊，为什么黑奴没有跑掉？那没看我没遇到过。看我抓去哪里？
看他们都不看出来干嘛？
干，这个是那个，那个，我靠，那太神了！对啊，那是那个飞碟百货那个。
啊？他们在干嘛？做
他被坏，因为他已经被火烧掉了，然后他在重新。
而且他刚刚倒下来，下面还有车子在。
是，可能死掉了。
但是刚刚叶老师说最好家里赶快先储水，很有可能会停水。
其实最重要的事情就是我们不能跟商业脱节，不能搞这种，我们反而要跟他们合作，这才是最重要的。我们要跟他们变化，就是要由我们去跟他们做变化，而不是说你期待说我用抗争的方式，用抗议的方式，然后逼所有民众去讨厌商业这个行为，是吧？这是不对的。我的意思是这样。
We ready?
我只是这样。
Okay, so what was the first question? What's the goal of the video? The outcome? Or the action? Who wants to share? Raise your hand. Thank you.
要打破消费的迷思。
Break the misconception about consumption. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So it's basically opening our eyes and showing a different perspective, right? Great. Anyone else? Anybody has a slightly different or completely different outcome of the video? Don't make me get the condom. Can we have somebody here, please?
我觉得他也有另外一个是要告诉这个看的人说，你也是其中的一员，你跟这所有的事情都是有关系的。
Thank you. So you are a part of the problem and can be a part of the solution, right? We are playing a role. Great. Anyone else? And then we'll go over here.
Sorry, I think I saw two objects in this video. The first one is that the author tried to describe the whole picture about the material economy. And the second one is that she wants to challenge the hypothesis behind this system.
Yes. Were you going to add anything else?
No.
Okay, good. That's I think that is the overarching theme of this video. And if you notice, and I think that is one of the strengths of the video, how it's showing you the whole process behind her, and it goes into one of the steps and explains it, and then it goes back out so you can see, and it keeps a very complex system in a very simplified way. And how at the end, the linear process gets connected, and she's showing how it could be as a cycle or a closed loop. Professor Fan?
Since it's very interesting to study this package thinking, so we know the separation of materials. And I also wondering because we also just argue with the former president, George Bush, but I just wonder, George Bush just say go shopping, it's like a joke or is it real?
It's real.
Want to ask if you know Laura Bush?
Yes.
What's her opinion? No shopping.
She did tell me, but I can't comment. It's classified information, actually. Last night during dinner, I was commenting with Professor Fang and the rest of the guests that I met Laura Bush many years ago, and we didn't talk about that. But she's a really nice lady. I know you're giving me that look. She's a really nice lady. Anyway, but yeah, it's well known in the United States that President Bush said that after 9/11. The whole rationale behind it was, if we don't go shop, we're not going to keep the economy moving, and then the terrorists are going to win because they're going to stall the economy. Anyway, I'm not going to comment. So, but thank you. And yes, a big, actually, the passion of the author of this video and the background of Annie Leonard is studying materials and studying how the process of taking materials out of nature and how we're disposing it. And she commented on her talk of how she would present this at conferences in a very technical way, and people would fall asleep, they wouldn't understand it. And she went through this leadership program where they taught her how to better communicate it and how to simplify it. And this is the product, the outcome of it. Lisa?
What is the name of that leadership program, and could any of the students here participate in it?
I'm going to pass the microphone back to you because I think you know the name of the program and I can't remember it now, but it has to do with wood, something wood. You remember? Wood. Madera. Madera. You remember? No. It's different than that. Yeah. Well, I can share the name of that leadership program later. We can put it on the materials online and share the link because I can't remember the name right now. But it's open to anyone. You have to be sponsored because it costs money. So they have grants and you can apply for a scholarship and go to it. It's a great program from what I've heard. Anyone else on the outcome or the goal? Why don't we move on to number 2? Who's the audience for this video? Who do you think is the audience? Or the audiences? Well, consumers? Yes, consumers in general?
American consumers.
Yes, American consumers, primarily. But if you notice how she presents it, how she says in my country, right? Because she was thinking beyond her main audience. She was thinking, this is for the American consumer, but this is something that is propagating around the world. The problem is being propagated. The more people have access to